Welcome to Oneness and Wellness. I'm here with a wonderful program today. It's Vortex Healing Time, and I'm here with Marsha Reddington-Lawton and Lorraine Goldblum, and it is wonderful to have you ladies back again, and I appreciate in the audience Laura helping us out today. So here we go. We're going to be talking about loss.
Yes.
But first, I'd like you to tell a little bit about what's been happening with some of the shows.
Well, yes, thank you for having me back. It's so nice to see you both again. And, it's interesting what's been happening with the shows. They seem to be catching on a bit. People are viewing them on the Dedham cable, of course, and I have them on my website and my YouTube channel. And people seem to be really resonating with what we're talking about here. I mean, we are talking about universal issues, right? And people relate to these issues. And I'm getting more and more feedback of how much people find them useful. And we've even been binge-watched a couple times.
Like that. I heard that's a really good thing when you're binge-watched.
I binged the Oneness and Wellness IssueSeries. Like, wow, that's exciting. But it means a lot to me. And it means that we're actually talking to people and hitting a nerve. I think it's important to talk about these things. And I think being able to talk about this kind of thing brings people closer together. And that is the point, isn't it?
Right.
And we just did Our Karma and Our Journey, Transforming Universal Issues at the Omega Institute, that 5-day workshop.
How did that go?
It went so well.
Oh, good.
It went so well.
Perfect environment.
It was a perfect environment. If you've never been to the Omega, have you?
I know, yes.
It's beautiful, and the food is wonderful, and it's very nurturing. And we had an amazing group of people, and we did this. We talked about different issues. We offered a perspective, and then of course I was able to do what I can't do here, is offer a group Vortex healing session on each of the issues. And I was so impressed by the group, by the level of maturity that came in, because we talk about this kind of thing, and you want to be able to go there and share, but not get too caught up in it. When you're talking about your own pain, it's easy to sort of spiral back. We just had an amazing group of people, an amazing sort of sharing experience. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with it.
I'm so happy for you, because I know that was, we were talking about it.
I know.
That's wonderful.
I had never done it in that format, and this format is really helping to develop that work.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
and some of the feedback from people who had attended talked about what, you go on vacation, or you go and you're packed, you carry your stuff with you on all levels, and having such a lovely environment where you're nurtured. And you might come in with a bunch of suitcases, but you go out with a lot less, because when you do this kind of work, and what the healing work's about is really being able to leave a lot of the loss behind, a lot of the emotional charge, so that life is freer. And people loved the week. And could I just ask you to share where Dedham Cable and Oneness and Wellness is showing up around the world?
Well, Vortex Healing is an international community. So those episodes, they're on my website, and little snippets of them get posted on Facebook. And talk about the power of social media.
Right,
so we're seeing them in communities like Portugal, Australia, Argentina. I just did when I was there in February, I did sort of the money event in Argentina, and that was inspired by the episode that we did here on Oneness and Wellness. So, the organizers there saw that episode, please bring that to Argentina, and they were very receptive, and it played beautifully. Universal issues, right?
Wonderful. Because many times, we might see people, I bump into people on the street, or somebody might see me and say that they had seen the program, but we don't get an awful lot of feedback. So to get that kind of feedback is really wonderful and interesting, and here we go.
Here we go. Here we go.
So
it's important. So we gather here, we're talking about issues. And what we're doing is we're talking about how issues keep us out of being present.
Right. And would you go over what is an issue?
Yeah. To me, an issue is anything that keeps you out of presence. Basically an issue is something that shows up in your life, in your physical body, in your personality, in your energy system, anything that distracts you from the moment, you know, from who you experience yourself to be, who you are with your friends, your community, your life. And issues are very distracting and they're very isolating. You know, they keep us in a small place of isolation, which is why talking about them is so important. Just the act of bringing awareness to them pulls us out of our own isolation, offers a perspective on it, and we can share and sort of bring everything back together as part of the healing process. And that's what we're trying to do here.
So you're talking about the moments in all of our lives when we say, oh, I wish I had been more present then.
Yeah.
But this was in the way.
Right. And issues like this, like loss, is huge in that way. I think we all walk around with a certain amount of, a teacher I had once used this term, existence pain. Just the pain of being in form. Just the pain of walking around as a karmic human being, carrying whatever we're carrying, you know, the load of that. And we get, it's so easy because of the nature of our issues, because they are physical, because they are real, to keep us in that existence pain. And it takes a fair amount of maturity, which was saying what I admired in this group, in this class that we just had, to really sort of take a look at that and say, okay, what is this? I'm willing to put this down now. Let's unpack this. It's a safe space. Let's take a look at it and bring ourselves back to the moment.
Well, and we're living in a society where the majority of people are overwhelmed with what they have to do in their private life, in their public life, and with people, with and then you have, you know, phones and television and all kinds of internet, you know, that keeps you, you have to unplug every so often, at least I do.
And take these moments to reassess.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's go talking a little bit more about loss.
About loss, because, you know, I realized in putting the issue series together, this was a topic I was avoiding. This is a very deep topic. This is a very hard topic to talk about, you know, the issue of loss and the grieving process. And I realized I kind of put it off because I didn't have, you know, having known loss and all that, I didn't really have an angle on it. I didn't know how to approach it, because a lot of times when we talk about our issues and our pain, we talk about how to come through it and how to, you know, transform it and all of that. And loss is just one of those things that you don't really move on from. It changes you. You know, so what we're talking about loss is we're talking about the experience of it. We're talking about allowing a safe space for us to grieve properly.
Exactly.
And I think that is an important distinction between loss and grief, because to me, loss is the pain that one endures. Grief is really just the process of cleansing the system of sadness. The grieving process is healthy and absolutely necessary.
It's sacred.
It is sacred to allow that to happen, even though it's so painful, to allow that, because that is the process through which we bring joy back to the memory
Oh, that's a wonderful
who we
statement.
lost. Yeah.
That's right, bringing it back to the memory.
So that we can think of that person or loved one or whatever it is that we've lost with joy again and without the pain. It's almost a way to honor
Absolutely.
the loss. But because it's so painful, it's so easy to get stuck.
Exactly.
You know, in those different phases. And we have this idea, there are all these ideas about the grieving process, that it should be over in a year, that it has these nicely defined stages, and there's validity to that, that Huber-Ross model, absolutely. But I don't think it's so cut and dry for any individual.
No.
And anyone who's really been through it is like, yeah, but it is still something that's changed.
I just finished hospice training for a local hospice, you know, the wonderful place. My neighbor was there, and so I had an opportunity to go and to see how did they do this?
Yeah.
You know, how was it set up? It was wonderful. It was a beautiful experience. So then I put my name on the list to do the training. And the training is very much, you know, the trainer was a wonderful one of the nurses from the VNA, and she said, every person is individual. The situation is individual. Family members, you know, you can't go in with an assumption that this is what would happen. And so I would say the same thing when you're talking about loss. It's an individual, you know, event that happens, you know, and how you face it and how you deal with it. And you're right. It doesn't, you know, you can't say, well, in a year you'll be better. No.
And I think, you know, that's an important thing to remember when we love someone who has lost something dear. You know, I remember the moment when a very dear friend of mine called me with the news that her son committed suicide. The phone, where I was standing, the news, and it's those moments that everything you think you know goes out the window. You know, all this talk about presence and awakening and all of the things that then suddenly you get news like that. It takes your breath away. And what do you do? What do you say? You know, and I all I could say was, I don't know what to say, but I'm here, go ahead. You know, and I didn't know if she would want to tell me the details of what would happen, or if we would just sit silently. It was just whatever she wanted, because I had nothing. And I think when we see loss in someone else, it brings up our own loss, our own fears of losing whatever, because inevitably we will all lose, you know, someone we love, and you know, everyone's going to die, and you know, no one gets out of this alive. So when we see it modeled in front of us, we just freak out a little bit, and it's so hard to remember that their process is unique, and to stay present and meet them in their process instead of imposing our ideas of what that should look like.
And I think that for me, what you just said, you know, is that when you said to your friend, you know, I'm here, I don't have any words, giving it back to her to tell you what she wanted to tell you. I think when people get nervous about it, they say, well, I know how you feel. That's absolutely the worst thing to say.
It's a very hard thing to hear on the other end.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a very hard thing to hear on the other end.
That's one thing, you know, we don't know that.
We
but
don't.
We say it because we don't know what to say. But why not say what you said? I don't have any words, but I can listen, I can be with you.
And I don't mean to say that I was that eloquent about it. I was just okay, I'm here, go ahead. You know, it wasn't I just you know, the point is that it couldn't be about me and what I offered. And I think when we see pain in front of us, that we are reminded of our own pain, and the instinct, we would do what we would want someone else to do if we were on the receiving end. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we have to be able to put our own pain down enough to see what they need. And the nature of compassion is, you know, it's our own ideas of what we think would help, and that's okay, but being present enough to see what's in front of us and meet that.
For me, such an important part of that, in my personal experience, and hopefully I can translate it for other people, is that when you sit there and you really see another's pain, they don't sit alone in that pain.
Right.
You can't take it, you're not going to change it, but to not be alone makes a huge difference.
Right. Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us, audience, and we'll be back with Marcia and Lorraine. For more information, check out our website, www.onenessandwellness.com. Thank you. Look forward to hearing us, and watch our show. Welcome back to Oneness and Wellness. I'm here with friends Marcia Reddington Lawton. She's been here for many, many times. You all know her. And Lorraine Goldblum, Vortex Healing.
Vortex Healing.
Back again, helping us out and telling us about the way that it's been going around and showing up in other countries.
It
That's
has.
wonderful.
It
Wonderful.
has. People really resonate
Right.
with this. And, you know, talking about issues like loss is so important.
Right.
You know, because, you know, what we were saying is that, everyone has a unique expression of it. And, the sharing, the providing a safe space to share is so important.
Exactly.
And you cannot have your own ideas about how this issue should be handled. Those judgments are deadly. Judgments
Exactly.
for yourself on how you should be and how long it should take you to get over something, and somebody else, oh, it takes a year or however long. Those are the things that just keep us in separation.
It's individual.
Absolutely.
And I think whatever the loss is, I think when my husband retired, people say, well, it'll take him 6 months, it'll take him to get adjusted, it'll take him whatever it takes him.
Yeah.
It's not something that, is
Yep.
Right.
It's different for every individual. So,
Well, the point is, whatever the loss is, it changes you.
Exactly.
And you can't pretend that it doesn't. If you've lost someone you love, or an identity or a way of living, things are different. So the first thing is that you can't pretend that it's not different. You have to sort of learn the new way and find a way to be open to life in that way. So often the nature of loss shuts us down. There's a really clever series called Afterlife. I'm not sure I think it's Netflix or Amazon Prime or one of those.
It's a movie.
It's a television series.
Okay.
With Ricky Gervais, and it's about a man who, before the series opens, lost his wife. And it basically shows him living his life and trying to go on. And it's a tragic comedy, because he's a comedian and he finds himself in funny situations. But what he communicates very well in this series is how he can't really be sympathetic or understanding to anyone else because he's in so much pain. Right? So he can't show compassion to other people because he's in so much pain. And I think, as when we're talking about issues as a way of keeping us in separation, loss does that beautifully, because how can you appreciate what's going on around you when you're in so much pain? How can it be sunny on the day of the funeral? That's terrible because I'm in so much. Why do you know what I mean?
Well, I do
hard.
know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know, and I think that there are so many people who never recover from a loss.
Right.
They stay in that,
Right.
and that's why I think when you're dealing with loss with Vortex Healing,
Yeah.
you're helping people to look at the issue,
Yes.
and perhaps, not necessarily forget about the loss,
Yeah.
but be able to be present
Yeah.
in the moment, even with the pain of loss.
That's right. And another thing that's very hard to remember is that you can have joy in your life and loss at the same time. We think it's
Absolutely.
one or the other. And that's where Vortex Healing comes into play. It releases the conditioning and the consciousness component, and it brings in an element of joy. And I remember sort of laughing for the first time after a loss, and then checking that in and saying, wait, how can I be laughing? That's not right. But a friend of mine said, no, that's part of it. That's part of coming back, and the system needs that. And we get so caught up in one or the other.
And that's the judgment that comes in.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
I have
Go
some
right
dear
ahead.
friends, and they both lost their spouses, and they were devoted in
Yeah.
their marriage and through the grieving process. And they met in a grieving circle.
Right.
Bottom line was, because they had gone through the process,
Yeah.
so the terrible pain of grieving, actively being aware and present with that, they came out the other side with the capacity to join the world faster than they thought was ever going to be possible.
Yeah.
And the point was, they worked that hard. They were that present in their grieving process and recognizing their loss, that sacred work
Yeah.
brought them back to freedom again.
I lost my cat last year. He was a beautiful companion. It was a beautiful passing. He was almost 20 years old. It was sort of, perfect. But it was the love of an animal is so pure and unmuddled by a lot of the relationship stuff that we have, that my grieving process for him allowed me to grieve on deeper levels. Because I just sort of allowed myself to let that process go And it allowed me to explore deeper levels of grief that I had been holding in my body and my system for so long. And I began to really understand what the grieving process was in a way that I hadn't before, because I hadn't really explored grief.
That's
But,
interesting.
you know, it was a beautiful gift because, you know, it was a very pure love. And I realized, wow, you know, these are the stages and this is a way to honor that cherished time together.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, Marsha helped me through when the Peace Abbey closed. You know, I was grieving, but you know, it was almost like I wanted to move on, and Marsha kept bringing me back to realizing how much grief, and it was okay, and it was, you know, all right, you grieve, and the
It's
loss.
a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It is, and so I absolutely.
And that's a
understand
friend.
what you're saying. Yeah.
That's a friend that's
Oh,
going to
gosh,
stand there
Marsha
and
was
reflect
amazing.
back to you and support you in that process, which is because if you don't, you know, we get stuck in like the anger phase because we don't want to be angry, you know, at whatever it is. And so we get stuck and suppress it and then carry around. And we just can't be present with ourselves in that way.
Well, I hate to say that we have to move on, but it's time for you to tell our viewing audience how to contact you or how to see what we did today.
Well, thank you. Yeah. My website is LorraineGoldblum.com, and you can see all of these issue series shows on my website. And you can also look at the vortexhealing.org website for information on Vortex Healing classes all over the world.
And you can watch Dedham TV, go to On Demand, look for Oneness and Wellness, and put in Vortex Healing and Loss, and you'll see what we do today. So, is there anything you'd like to say before we say goodbye to our audience?
Just thank you, and for this format, for being able to share. This stuff is so hard, and again, that our issues just drive us into separation and shame, and to be able to sort of bring this in this format, bring this out in this format is an incredible privilege. So just thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Lorraine. Marsha, anything that you might like to say?
Part of honoring ourselves is honoring our feelings. Profoundly important to honor our feelings. And when we can do that and have support to do that, the process is sacred, much safer, not ever easy, but it's a path to freedom. And it takes us back to the beauty of our loss and what we gained when we had the privilege of having that company. So.
And if you've been able to, viewing audience, if you've been able to share with a friend, such as I, with Marsha, and Lorraine has talked about sharing with a friend, be grateful for that, because that person is there for you. And that's, if you have just one person who's there for you, that makes it all possible. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for being with us. Namaste.
Namaste.